there we go. We're recording. Stefanie Nici. How's it going? What's going on? Nice hair today. I like it.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Little gray day here today, but we're
It's
making
okay.
the best of it. Somehow.
Today is National Celebrate Redhead Day.
Oh, is it? Well, my
Yeah.
hair doesn't look red though, right? I'm a
No,
blonde.
no. I'm just
Oh,
saying. At the time of because this will be coming out after we record it, but at the time it's November 5th, and it is officially National Redhead Day.
oh wow.
I think people should know that. Just because people always like redheads have no souls. You know. Right.
No,
So, let's support. But I bring that up because you ever notice, and I do it too. I love redheads. So, but in books, there's always a redhead.
yes, there is. I have redheads in my books as well.
See, so we have
Yeah.
to celebrate them because they're part of our characters. And now, did you were you like, hey, I need to have a redhead because it's a book.
Right. Well, no, I didn't do it that way, but everyone is always blonde, brunette, and it seems so,
Boring.
there's nothing, there's nothing, you need a character with red hair. And it's funny because my son had a friend and his hair is red. They're still friends to this day. And it was his best friend at the time, but now they're older. So they, separated, they moved far apart. And I had a red haired best friend when I was a kid.
See?
And they just bring something different to life conversation. Like, you know what I mean? They have there is something about that gene that does make them, other than the hair, a little different in a
They have
good
a
way.
higher pain tolerance. Did you
In a
know
good
that?
Oh, you know what? I did hear that. Yes, I did hear that. And as much as redheads may hate freckles, I love freckles.
Yeah.
To me, freckles represent youth. Like when I was younger and I used to tan and I would get freckles across like the bridge of my nose and on my cheeks, it was like such a fresh-faced look.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get that when I was older and I tanned and I could never get those freckles back again. And I was really upset about it. But I know redheads are not a fan of their freckles and they should be. I feel like celebrate the freckles,
I know. Their freckles are very pretty. I've dated or interacted with several redheaded women in my lifetime. I have an addiction. I apologize to anyone who feels objectified, but how can you not? How can you not?
I think it's a good thing. Some gentlemen, some prefer blondes, some prefer brunettes, some prefer redheads, some like long hair, some like short hair.
Right. I
some
prefer
like no hair.
intelligence, and then the other stuff is like whatever.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
It's all private. Because if you can't be with an intelligent person, then you can't have intelligent conversations. And let's be honest, you're a writer, I'm a writer. We're not going to talk about just the mundane, even though we would, but we see the mundane and then we overanalyze it, we explore it, we look at the nuance of it. And some people just can't really keep up with that because it's boring to them. But to us, we're just like, look at these people sitting and having coffee. But like now our brains are like, what if their life went this way? Or what is their life to get up to here? And then I wonder what they're talking about, and we become intellectualized in those situations.
So true. Do you ever have conversations with people and then you get off on some kind of different subject or go a little deeper, and maybe the people or person across from you just maybe is saying, what the heck is he talking about?
All the time, often, very often.
That's why it's great if writers can talk to each other, because it's just like a different way of thinking. And like you said, it's a little, I don't want to say deeper, but there's just a little bit more to it that maybe other people do not want to, they don't want to go there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Depending on the topic, they just don't want to go there.
Well, I live by the rule, yes, and. Like if somebody brings something up, yes, I accept the premise and let me add to it, and but not many people are like if you make a joke or if you make an observation, usually it's like, why are you even like, I don't want to talk about that. And you're like, okay, well, you're no end. Okay.
Or some people find it offensive.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't like your and, yes, and they don't like that and, what you're including or what you're, in the subject of the topic. So
they get thrown off, and writers feel very lonely when we can't talk to people because we feel isolated, even surrounded by people, because it's like all they're talking about is either gossip or things that don't really matter. And but to them, they're like, oh, well, this seems like substance because I'm talking about what Mike did the other day to Melissa, or and you're just like, or
Right.
hey, I just went to work the other day.
But
I don't
yeah, my
care.
boss gave me a hard time.
Yeah,
But then throw in an explosion on the way to work,
yeah,
or
right. I
your
want to
boss
see some
gave you a
cars
hard
blow up.
time and he's in the back room killing off the staff. Like, you know what I mean? That's, I think, what goes through our minds while people are talking
Yeah,
about, that, you know, work
yeah.
or
But
whatever.
but I but I
Whatever.
I'm also like listening to like the human psychology of it. Like if somebody is like, my boss gave me a hard time, I'm like, well, they're paying you to give you a hard time.
Right, right.
Like you're there to work. So if you do not like the job, why don't you leave? Well, I need the job. Yeah, but there are so many
Other
job
jobs.
opportunities. You just need to. It's not like you have to quit the job to apply. You apply to other jobs, and then if you get it, then you quit your job. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
But
what if they need me right away? Well, you don't have to give 2 weeks. They don't give you 2 weeks when they fire you.
yeah, that's a very good point.
I'm saying that's old school. That's from a time way before the kids today. But the
That's a good
millennials
point.
know, like the kids they're all just like, I just want peace. I want to work from home and I want $80,000 a year. And the people are like, I can't hire you. I need you in the office.
Yeah, that's
But
that's what we want too. We want $80,000 a year and to work from home as writers.
that's right. That's right. Well, I've been working from home since 2005. So it's been a long time.
That's fabulous. For me, I think it's been 4 years. But now when you say you work from home, you're editing, right? Like other than writing, there's other things that you're doing as well.
Well, I was a screenwriter. I worked in TV and film. I've been on Saturday Night Live numerous times. So like when I say I work from home, I'm my own boss. So I don't have to leave the house unless I choose to. So if I want to
Right.
work on set when I was in New York, I had to make that choice. It wasn't like they were like, we need you today. Like I have to audition, or I have to go talk to somebody, or I have to do whatever.
And you have
Uh,
to travel, which
yeah, but they pay you. They pay you for the travel.
yeah, but even just having to like get up, like I remember when I used to have to get up for work. Do I have time to eat before I go to work? Because if I don't, I'm just going to eat junk when I get there, something unhealthy. I have to rush to get dressed, and then things happen. Your coffee spills. You
Yeah.
can't find your other shoe. You can't find the keys to your car. You worry about being late. I mean, so many things happen on the way to work that just like upset your day. It's so much nicer if you can work from home and you don't have to leave. You don't have
Yeah.
to wear
You
a
don't have to
uniform if you're a uniform worker.
Well, that's the other thing, like I have clients and they'll just, we'll video, like the world, we don't have to technically leave the house nowadays, the
Yeah.
technology has, but, people who think, oh, being in film and television is this glamorous thing. But in reality, you're talking about getting up, right? But you have to get up at like 2, and then you got to travel. You got to be on set by 4 or 5. You got to do makeup. That's an hour or 2 hours, depending on what's going on for the day,
It's
then
a
you stand
lot.
around most of the time. But yeah, the glamorous part is you do. I worked on Birdman. I don't know if you know that movie with
Oh,
Michael
with
Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, I did 2
I
days
never,
on
but
that.
I never watched it. Were you in it?
I'm in blink and you'll miss me, but I did work on the film. But I did 2 days on it, and the first day I worked on it, I was there for almost 16 hours.
Wow.
Okay, again, blink and you miss me. 2 days, one day was almost 16 hours. I slept for almost 6 hours that day. And they pay you. I was on set, but they didn't need me. So I just slept and waited until they called me to go in, and then I had to run into Michael Keaton. That's why I get to run into Michael Keaton. I'm like a distraction. And it is what it is. But like
It's a
at
lot of
this,
standing around, right?
well, or
It's
sleeping.
or sleeping. In your case, it's a lot of sleeping.
Yeah, but you what's really nice is that's what it is. It's hey, stay back, relax. But oh, we need you now. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Okay, we don't need you.
Right.
Slow down. Go relax. Go have food. That's crafty. Oh,
But when
let's
they're
eat
ready,
lunch. Yeah.
they're ready, right? Because it's all about the time, right? And the lighting. Like I guess if you're working outside, that's about the lighting, right? You need the daylight.
Well, it
when you're
depends.
filming?
If we did a night shoot, so it was lighting in the sense of
Ah,
you gotta light the night still, but
on s-
daytime you don't really have
on
to worry.
set. So, and how was that filmed? Was that on a set, or was that like in the street, blocked off, or a mix of both?
The theater stuff was literally filmed in a theater, and then the James Theater, James whatever it's called, James something theater, and then outside was outside. It was all filmed in New York. It was they had I don't remember them having a lot of sets. Everything was practical. Where I
Mm.
filmed, it was a street. But what was funny is like where if you watch the movie where Michael Keaton and I like run into each other, like when he's like in his underwear and he just got locked out of the theater and he's like walking through the streets and then like we hit each other and then he sort of like walks around the corner. The next shot is Times Square-ish where he's just like and then the next shot is him going into the theater and those are three different locations.
Oh wow.
They're not
I,
even near each other.
isn't that's funny, right? And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
know
they
that.
don't.
Or how things are filmed. They say it's New York, but actually it's someplace else. Or
Calgary, it could be
they say it's,
Canada, it could be,
yeah, it could be
Vancouver.
anywhere. And they
Yeah,
say it's someplace else. It's
do you
such
ever
an
watch the
interesting.
show Lucifer?
No, I
Oh,
have. I've heard of it.
Lucifer's a very funny show, but Lucifer, Psych, shows like that, those was filmed in Canada, because of the different
Mm.
tax brackets. But the other funny thing is like when you're on a set, you'll see somebody like in a living room, and they're acting, and then they'll like walk into a room, and then they'll cut because that door was a closet, and then, but if you
Oh,
watch the final product, they just walked into a bathroom because they found a bathroom in a different location that they liked, so they wanted to go to so
yeah,
it's always been interesting to me about the process, but
I think
you
so.
know that's always helped me with writing too because I look at books like a film or a television show. I don't write like when I read a book, like I love this book. I don't know if you've read this book yet. This is The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. He's like a big author, whatever.
No, but wow, that's a big read.
It's a good read. It's a
How
good.
many how many pages is that?
Well,
I think that's bigger than a Stephen King book
it's
because I know Stephen King has some long books.
that's right. It's 539 pages, but I wouldn't look at it as pages. I look at it as words. It's like 300,000 words, but
Right.
uh, but that book revolutionized the way writing works. Though he's a big name, but like you read that, it feels like a book though, or you read a Brandon Sanderson. And when I write, I try, not that I try, but because I've written scripts for so long, my
Right.
books have like a cinematic kind of where I'm framing things, like I'll put somebody in a shot, the way I'm
Oh,
looking at something or the way a character or like an insert, like when someone's in a show and they're looking at their phone and you see the phone, that's called an insert. If
uh-huh.
somebody's looking at something, if they're like, oh, look, there's something over there in the mountain, they'll cut to the mountain and
Right.
that's called an insert, right? So I think in that kind of frame when I'm writing. So if you read my stuff, you can feel the camera moving almost.
So you would also say that you write in a descriptive way. You're very descriptive, or
I
no?
wouldn't I wouldn't say I'm descriptive. I'm emotionally present through how the
Mm,
character is physically uh I guess moving through something,
mm,
whether it's environment or a good example is if I'm writing about a couple in a like let's say a diner. I don't describe the diner, but what I do have happen is you hear the clicks of the cups. The waitress walks
uh,
by more than once. They comment on the diner. Like, oh, that light is still broken over there. You think they'll ever fix that? Because it's deflection to the real conversation. And the other character's like, look, you brought me here. I would rather, can we just talk about what we need to talk about? And then the person starts mixing their coffee. Right. So I want the environment to feel like it's a part of the narrative experience and not just an environment. Because the rule of thumb is if you can take that scene and now take them out and put them in, say, like, I don't know, a house or a
mm,
barn or outside, and it's still the same scene, like emotionally, and has the same cues, then you didn't need them to be in a diner, right? So
Mm,
when I'm working with clients, if they're in a location, that's one of the things I look for, because my brain is trying to picture the scene. And if I can't picture the scene, if I can't picture the background actors, if I can't picture the movement of the environment, if they're not interacting with the environment, if it's stale and become, even if they describe it, like, the, what do I call it? Baby writer syndrome, where the first two paragraphs is just pure description of the
oh,
environment, and then it's just dialogue and maybe some movement, occasional smiles, a nod, maybe some of this, but like they don't really go back to the environment. They just
okay.
spend their word count in the beginning, where it's like, the diner had a broken light in the corner, and the waitresses moved around frantically, running to the morning, whatever, and the person behind the counter is chewing on their pencil, taking, jotting down numbers into the thing, and then like it goes to the characters, and now they have a conversation.
Gotcha.
To me, I do it a little differently. I would
So
recommend other people do it too.
while, while we're talking about that as a writer, what about a reader? Because I recently learned, well, maybe not so recently, but I learned that people, when they read, some, which is me, do not visualize the scenes as a movie. Like what I see is the important parts, or if there's a confrontation or something notable, or you know what I mean, or if it's descriptive. But I've learned that other people that read, the entire book to them plays in their mind
Yeah,
like
like
a
a movie.
movie.
Yeah.
And there's a word, and some people have no visuals whatsoever. And there's a word for that, a term for that, where you only see the words
Yeah.
on the page and you don't play it out in your head. So I found that to be very interesting. So now, as a writer, you're explaining how you like to, write your scenes. But how about as a reader? When you read, is everything playing out like a film also, or no?
Yeah, I can feel and see the movements, working out, because like when I was writing screenplays, for example, you're writing mostly dialogue, right? Like
Mm,
the action beats are there more for like what is the physicality of it, but you rarely would be like he
right.
smiled, he moved over to the table. Like you don't do blocking, it's just dialogue. So over the years, I had to learn to take just dialogue, just pure dialogue, and say, how do I make this feel something? How do
Mm,
I give this weight, instead of it just being exposition, or just being, hey, they have to argue here. Like it shouldn't just be arguing. It should be something that comes from something organic. And so now when I read, I still have that same kind of, my brain is connected to that. And if I don't feel it, then I know that I'm not enjoying the writing then, or I know that the writing is not doing what it needs to do. But even what you were saying about the people who don't see, when I'm writing, that's why I don't describe things. I let the scenes move through the characters. So if they can't visualize it in their head, at least the environment is a character. It's something that is
mm,
having a cause and effect with the interaction of the characters, with the interruptions. Because life is messy. So if it's not messy on the page, with clarity, by the way. but if it's not messy, then it's not true. If everything works out perfect, oh, all the sugar I need for my coffee is in the thing. I don't have to ask for another one, or I don't rip it open and sugar falls on the table, and some goes, and I have to get another one because I didn't get all the sugar into the cup. Like, if you don't have moments like that, nothing's
mm.
perfect, is what I'm saying. You have to have people mess up. You have to, or what's the other thing? Another thing that I see a lot of clients do, or even newer writers, is they're afraid to hurt their protagonists,
Yes.
right? They're afraid to put them in situations where they might appear incapable, or weak. And
Right.
it's like we want them to be weak so we could see their strength.
Yes.
And you have let them have an accident, let them crash their car, let them say the wrong thing, let them, whatever. That's the real interesting part, is how do you make a capable character find themselves in an incapable situation, and then have to utilize what they know to assimilate to that, and then change, which is important, and then work their way out of a situation. I think that's more interesting than them walking in and they're perfectly fine.
And everything's perfect. Yeah. But it's funny because when you bring that up, it's so true. And these are fictional characters. They're not real. Well, they're real to us as we
Yeah.
create them, I guess, but it's true. We don't want to hurt them. We don't want to make them seem unlikable if in the story they are not supposed to be unlikable. And we don't want to necessarily show the weaknesses because sometimes when I read other book reviews, some readers will criticize the writing and say, well, the main character was, like you used the word, weak,
Yeah.
or she was gullible, too naive, and things like that. But that's the real world. We know people. If we're not like that, we know people that are like that, and that's what makes the characters feel so real. But yet it seems to upset some people when they read that. I don't know why.
Well, a lot of my mentors used to tell me, like when I was in music, when I did writing for screenplays and everything, it was always the same kind of conversations with people that I looked up to. And they're like, if you create for the audience, you're not creating anything.
Right.
You're
Yep.
not doing anything, and reviews are what they are. They're opinions. They're subjective at best. They're
Right.
even Siskel and Ebert are not technically, when they give their review, this movie sucked, and then but Pet Detective became so massive that
Oh,
Jim Carrey blew, and they were like, this is terrible, and so opinions don't really have weight to me, and only because my mentors had taught me that, look, if you create something for yourself, if you create the thing that you want to read, the thing that you want to see, the thing you want to hear, the
right,
art
right,
you want to look at, right? That becomes emotionally connected to something true, something pure inside you. Then audiences will, and not everyone, but some people will connect to that truth and they'll relate to it, or as the famous word of the in the world, resonate. It will resonate with them. And like when I did stand-up comedy, comics, and I say this all the time on the channel, comics always used to say, and probably still to this day, I want to make the entire room laugh. And that's the wrong approach when you're starting out. It's not
mm,
about the entire room, it's about the people that connect with you. Because Louis C.K. or Jerry Seinfeld or whoever's out there doing comedy, the room is filled with their audience, not random people who walked into a bar or a comedy club that just want to hear comedy and not a specific comic. You're trying to build your audience. So if you write a book and somebody says, well, I didn't like the character being weak. Well, how many reviews did you get? How many book sales did you get? And, why don't you look at the majority versus the minority? If three people
right.
say your character was too weak, we could ignore that if you have 100 reviews. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, exactly. But I'm speaking about just like reviews in general because
Yeah.
I like to read reviews before I read a book
Yeah.
sometimes. I don't want the spoilers. Or if someone is really bragging about a book, say half of the readers that I see on social media say they love the book, and then another half say, oh, they couldn't stand the book. I like to go look at the reviews and see what people thought about it. And
Yeah.
sometimes one of those critiques will be, I don't like the way the writer made the main character. She made her, too gullible, or like that was unbelievable. And
It's
but
not
that
their book.
happens but people are gullible in real life. So I don't know why
Yeah.
that upsets people so much. Like the world is filled with a variety of people and we all have, different ways of approaching things, or we have our flaws, or yeah, we're
Yeah.
gullible, we're naive. Sometimes we're nasty, sometimes we're not nice. But as the journey in the story goes on for the character, then we learn, the character builds themselves up to be not so naive and gullible, right? They learn
Yeah.
something. Usually, that's usually the way it goes. And then hopefully the reader says, oh, I see why this was done this way, or why this was written this way, because it all tied up nice and neat in a bow at
Yeah.
the end.
The variables though might be, if we're going to look at the negative version of it, maybe the character was too gullible for too long, and it
Mm,
wasn't until the very end where they learned something, so they didn't technically earn it. Maybe
true.
the reader, it's like a reader, trigger warnings, I could go either way, but like, how there's trigger warnings, some people
Yes.
get upset when there's screaming, right? Oh, it triggers me from my youth, right? That just means that's not your book.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't like gullible characters. That's not your book.
Some
It's like
Yes.
reading a review that says I never read romance. I was asked to read this. I'm giving a review. It's terrible. There's too much kissing. There's too much loving. They're on dates. Like, I didn't need a chapter of lovemaking.
Because they don't read romance, so
They
it's not
don't
the
read
type of book.
romance.
But a romance reader is going to want that in the story, and they
100%.
might even say, "Hey, there wasn't enough." Like some
Yeah.
readers would say, "There wasn't enough romance in this story,"
Or
while
maybe
the
the
other
person
person is saying, "Hey, there was way too much romance in this
too
story."
much romance. But even
So, yeah.
somebody who a guy or a girl could be reading romance for the first time and they don't believe in love because they've been smited so much, either a guy or girl, and they get to they go, oh, it had a happily ever after. This wasn't real. This doesn't really happen. Why didn't they cheat? Why didn't no one cheat? There was no fighting. There was no gaslighting. This is a terrible book, right?
Right.
It's not your book. It's okay. Have fun.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
again, the percentage you gave is very funny. The 50% like it, 50% don't like it. Something's going on with that book. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
a very
Or the author. So there's an author. I won't mention who it is, but you probably figure it out. But this author writes books, and they're making some movies out of her books.
yeah.
And some readers say it seems like immature writing, like because I love to read the reviews for that, because like I said, some people love her books, some people hate them, and some people didn't care for the movies, and some people did, or the one movie. But it's interesting to get the feedback. But she is doing very well from what I see. But like I said, some reviews, they said they found her writing to be very immature, while other people, they love the story. So everybody's different, every reader's different.
Yeah, it's
And
not their book.
yeah, it's just not, yeah, exactly, it's just not their book. Or how about when a movie, sometimes, I know maybe I'm going to get hell for this, but sometimes a movie is better than the book.
Oh yeah. Well, sometimes a screenwriter understands emotion. They understand, cause and effect. They understand give and take. Whereas some books that were turned into movies, the books themselves aren't necessarily doing cause and effect. It's sort of hitting beats. This has to happen. This has to happen.
Right,
Oh,
right.
I'm doing the tropes, but I did sometimes you can do a trope really well though, and it works out, like, proximity love, where it's only two people in a room and there's one bed, like some people are like, oh yes, and other people might be like, it seems unrealistic, whatever the case is, it's whoever's reading it is reading it. At the end of the day though, are you making money?
Right. That is the whole point.
Yeah, like,
And I feel anyway, all reviews are good reviews. If someone read the book and they didn't care for it, and they wrote a review that they didn't care for it, I think that's fine, because you got the feedback, number one. Number two, some other readers are tempted to read the book when they see a bad review, why someone didn't like a book, and then they're like, well, I want to see for myself if this is actually, you know what I mean, like it's a challenge, like a reader's challenge.
Yeah, I'm gonna prove to myself that this book is good. But if there's 1,000 reviews and there's only 20 negative reviews, and I'm talking like 1 stars, there are no negative reviews to that book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not a number. But if there's 1,000 reviews and there's 300 negatives, maybe something's going on. You know what I'm saying? But it's like with beta readers. You don't listen to change one beta reader's opinion about a character they don't like when the other 9 beta readers were like, this was my favorite character. You don't say, well, I got to change it because I need all 10 people to love
like
that character. No, this wasn't your character. And that's like, for example, there's a character named Emlyn in my book, right? And purposefully, he's supposed to be hated, right? But and you get to the end of the book, you're like, I love this character. But he's written to be hated.
Right.
And then he's written to be like, not only do I not hate this character, but I would be him in the beginning of the book, now that I have the context. Now that I understand him, now that I've lived through him, I would have done everything he did in the beginning.
Right. Because now you understand it as you read it.
That's right. And that's a thing I feel some books miss, especially in the first, second, or third books that people write, is I'm going to explain to you why they're an a-hole. So now the mystery is gone. And now they're just a-holes. And but I want you to connect with them, so I'm going to tell you their backstory. No, let them live, let them behave, and let it come out, because now I am growing to know you. It's like meeting somebody for the first time. Like, let's say you and I met each other at Starbucks or whatever, and we're like, oh, hey, hi, and you're like, hey, hi, and then one of us unloads the entire history of who we are to you, just so you can understand me and have a weight to it. You'd be like, get away from me, right? But if you learn,
people do that though. People
and what do? We go, get away from me, right? We go, you're not my book. No, so, but if that exact same information was explored over, say, 6 or 7 years of a relationship, you would fall more in love with me as a friend, because you can now relate to me. You can now understand the empathy. You can and
right.
You have
connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots. Yep. And in stories, usually, like they say, show, don't tell. So show why this character is really not the bad guy or girl everybody thinks they are, or, why they did or said what they did. And then, like you said, as the story goes on, at the end, Emlyn is the character's Emlyn.
Yeah.
People will love, or at least no longer dislike Emlyn, because they get his journey, they get his story, they get why he did or said the things that he did.
Yeah.
So
because too much
an enjoyable part of a book.
That's the whole. You're reading it to watch characters grow, and you also want to root for and hate and like and dislike. You want to have these relationships with characters, but when those relationships are subverted, or they're twisted or turned, and the rug's pulled out from underneath, but it's all there on the page, so it's not like just the subversion. It's something that like played out and grew. You as a reader become satisfied with that. You're like, oh, all right, I don't feel betrayed, but I feel like, the back and forth,
right. He's not so bad after all. It's like a killer. Yeah. Someone who's killing all these people, but yet he finds a stray kitten in the street and picks it up and feeds it and takes it home. And then people are like, oh my God, he can't be that bad. So what? He murdered 25 people. He's being so nice to this kitten, so there's a redeemable quality there. He likes animals, but he doesn't like people, which is a lot of people feel that way too. They don't like people, but when it comes to animals, anything goes.
But let's be honest, there's several Hannibal books. There's several movies about Hannibal, and he eats people. So, there's a television show. There's, and he's the protagonist. So
yeah, and people love it.
And people love it. So, again, it's like, how do we? You said it earlier. I want a character to be likable, but how do I do that? Well, Hannibal's likable because of all the screws loosed, all the mess ups, all the broken things, but how they operate and how they overcome things. Even as a villain, in my mind, he's evil, right? He's a serial killer. So
right.
But at the same time, the reason we can relate and connect to him is not because he's a serial killer. It's because of all the other things that make him a whole character. And that's not an easy thing to do as a writer.
It's not.
And I think for doing this for over 20 years and like working with other writers and being told many things that I've done were stupid as a young writer, and like, you don't know, why don't you study this? Why don't you look into that? Is like, when we're writing characters, sometimes we start on the outside, and that's the wrong approach. If I go, I need a strong female character who is, the head of the CEO, she's a CEO. That's where she starts out in the story. Okay, but what's interesting about that? Oh, she's a strong female character that's she's a CEO. Okay, but I didn't ask you to tell me what she is. What is interesting about that? Well, what do you mean? Well, like, is she from a broken marriage, a broken family? Does she struggle with mental health? Does she have fears? No. She's a strong. I want to show her being true and in her environment, and everybody looks up to her. I go, all right, well then she's not the protagonist, right? She's just like a secondary. No. The story's told through her. Okay, what's interesting about that?
Yeah, how'd she get there? Did she do something right?
That's also not interesting though, because we're not going to see that.
If it plays into the story well, because then again, it's the writing.
Well, now why don't we tell that story then? See, this is how writer rooms sound, because somebody says, I want to have a strong female character as a CEO. And you're saying a better question. Well, how'd she get there? Well, we're not telling that story. That's what somebody would say, right? And you go, well, why don't we tell that story? Because we could make that interesting.
Right.
But how she got there isn't what makes her interesting in that description.
Well, I guess it depends on the story too. If she has maybe a big secret she's hiding, or
well, now we're getting into the rough of it.
She's avoiding certain clients or not showing up to meetings, but she is that powerful CEO woman. So that's where, like, when you say she's a powerful CEO and she's a female, but why or how did maybe she killed somebody. Maybe the police are constantly coming to the office and saying, we need to ask you a few questions. And the whole office is like, what's going on with Miss Garland?
Now,
you know what I mean? That's how I looked at it when you said it. That's how I would work it maybe.
But here's how you develop a story now. Those aren't bad ideas. The only problem is they're things that happen. Right?
Well, we don't know. Maybe they didn't happen. We don't know.
Well, we would have to know as writers.
That's part of the story, though.
No, we as writers.
But the reader wouldn't know.
We don't write for readers. We write for ourselves first. And when you're developing a story, you can't develop it for the reader. You got to develop for the writer.
Ourselves. But are these things that happened, or did they not happen?
Well, I can't go on to the next question if we don't solidify an answer for that.
No, because you said these are things. I know. All right, here we're gonna go head to head.
Well, because I'm trying to develop the story. I'm trying to develop the story, and you're talking about the reader.
Only because of the statement that you said, these are things that happened.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't things that happened.
But then we're no longer developing the story.
No. Maybe somebody got accused of something. Maybe they didn't happen. You as the writer, if it happened or it didn't happen. But you're saying as the writer that it did happen. But me on my end, maybe I'm writing the story and saying she's being accused of doing these things and they didn't happen. But I'm the writer, so I know they didn't happen.
All right. Let's go with that.
I'm still going to write it.
Let's solidify that. So
I think this is a great show. We should agree to disagree every time we talk. We disagreed on something else once before too.
This is what Long Island Italians sound like.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. You're saying that this is my point. This is my point when developing. We're still on the outside. You're saying she didn't do the things that she's accused of doing, right? That's the position you're taking for this story. That's still things happening.
Well, I'm only saying that because you said, but these are things that happened.
But I'm also continuing to say these are things that, when I say things are happening, it means nothing is happening. It means that it's all outside stuff. If a character is a woman or a man, not interesting. If a character is strong, not interesting. If a character is a CEO, not interesting. If a character is accused of murder, but didn't actually murder anyone, still not interesting.
But the reader doesn't know that. But
we're not talking about readers yet, though.
How is it? But how is it not? But interesting to who then? Interesting to the writer as they write the story. But if they already know what's going to happen, because you said they're the writer.
Well, let's put it this way.
Which sometimes, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to say one more thing. Sometimes as the writer, we do not know what's going to happen. Sometimes our stories take a turn. And we may have set out to have this happy ending, or Jane to end up with Jack, or whatever the case may be, or the person flies off to Italy at the end. But as we write that story, we don't always know what's going to happen either.
Well, let's talk about that then.
So
let's say Jane and Bill end up together. That's not interesting. And the reason is because that is what happens, but it isn't something is happening.
But but let me ask you this though. As a writer, there are stories, there's tropes, and there's, cliches, and there's happy endings. Yeah. You can watch 5 movies that you know what's going to happen in the end, but they're all written by 5 different writers.
Yes.
And one of those writers is going to really knock it out of the park. And then they're going to go, well, this was the 4th best. This was the 3rd best. This was the 2nd best. So it also depends on the writer. You could take the most common subject.
Yeah.
A guy goes to work and loses his job and his life falls apart.
Yeah.
Now that could just be, boring, but the writer is the one that's going to make it interesting, because each
and I agree. But you know what they're doing.
Way of the life falling apart. So
Yes,
why would the
but
female
it's
CEO, her story of how she maybe clawed her way to the top or killed people
but
or
let's say she's an alien and has superpowers, and when she farts, it heals people.
well,
That's
some
still
people
not
don't like that
interesting.
story.
But what I'm saying is it's not interesting because it's just things happening. If there's a character who can fart and heal people, how many times can you see that on the page before you're like, okay, I get it. She farts and heals people, because it's just things happening. But the moment we go inside that character, the moment we understand why she's using the power to heal people, just because she can heal them doesn't mean she has to, but she is choosing to. Now we're getting into the interesting,
So
because
you're
we are
talking
in the
about
choices.
right. So you're talking about thoughts and emotions.
No, thoughts and
So
emotions are things happening.
so you're talking about, but if the person's emotions are driving them to do something, that is things happening. So when you talk about from in here, what do you mean?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if on the page it is just like, I like the color blue, and it makes me sad because my father used to wear blue. Like, that's just things happening. That's just telling. That's just, who cares.
Right.
What I'm talking about is the deeper truth, a position, let's say. Okay, so every character has a position, and every character's position, let's be honest, they have multiple positions, but every character has positions. What their position is where the interesting starts, because now you can challenge that position. So they like the Jets. All right, well, the narrative is going to be about other people saying the Jets suck, and it's them having to deal with that. And then they meet a girl that they love, and her whole family loves the Jets. So now what's interesting about that is his position of loving the Jet, of not like, or whatever. Her family's Giants fans, and he loves the Jets because it's connected to his father. Now we're getting to the position. We're building on the position, so we can challenge that now, right? So to be with this woman, he has to accept that the Giants are the team the family loves and they're rivals. But I love this woman, and I want to be with her. So he has to keep making choices based on that position being challenged. Is it worth it? Every time I go there on Sundays, the whole family makes fun of me because I have my jersey on, and they all have their Giants jerseys on. It's not that they have jersey on that is interesting. It's not that he's in a room filled with Giants fans and he's a Jets fan. That's interesting. What's interesting is he's making the choice to be there despite these things, because he's in love with this girl and wants to be a part of her life. So he's going against the things he believes to deal with this conflict and tension. He's making that choice based on a position. Without positions, without a deeper understanding of character choice, being a CEO isn't interesting. It's the choices they make while being a CEO and why they are making them that
Yes.
makes
And
that.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. But when you gave your points and then I gave my point as to how she became that CEO, and you said that's not interesting, but it could be, depending on how it's written.
But
It could be,
again,
it could be very interesting.
you
You could
cannot write
change it from
interesting.
sports to the jersey, and she could love somebody, and maybe her strength threatens the relationship. It's the same thing with the sports analogy that you used.
Let's go
It
back to
depends on
that.
how, it
Let's go
depends
back to
on how
that
you write it.
example.
Maybe we're beating this dead horse to a death
No,
that's
no, no,
already
no, no.
done.
I just listen.
Let's change the subject.
I
think everything depends on how it's written. You could write a Cinderella and respin it and retell it with elves, or with a princess, or
but
not
let's
a
say
princess.
they're all elves that shoot rainbows out of
maid.
their eyes. Is that interesting?
What? I'm sorry, what?
Let's say Cinderella can shoot lasers out of her eyes. Like, is that interesting?
I think it depends on the reader. I mean, maybe it's not interesting to me, but depending on the reader and the age of the reader, that could be very interesting.
All right, let's say it's an adult
love that
book.
retelling of Cinderella that she
it's
shoots lasers out of her
It's
eyes.
an adult retelling of Cinderella, and the pitch of this. A writer comes in and says, "I'm pitching Cinderella remake." She shoots lasers out of her eyes, and if we don't push back on that to ask why, then it's not interesting. If we're just like, well, it's lasers, people love lasers, it's Cinderella.
You have to know. Yes, you have to know why.
So it's.
I'm not saying you don't have to know why.
But I was doing an exercise with you.
Here? I have no idea.
This conversation started with I was showing you an exercise. but the exercise got convoluted in, other things that had
Other
nothing to do with
thoughts.
the
Only
exercise.
because you said it wouldn't be interesting, but depending on how it was written, it could be very interesting.
100%. I agree with you. But to make it interesting, it can't just be things are happening.
Right.
It has to be why they're happening.
Thank you.
But
Yes,
from
exactly.
inside the character, not I want to
I
see
thought
how
that's
she
what I
became a
was.
CEO, because that's not the story we were pitching in the example.
I
We're
don't
not
know
in
what you were pitching in the example, though, because you were the one pitching the
the
example. I
pitch.
was.
The example was she is
We
a
didn't talk about
CEO.
this prior, so I
No,
didn't even know you were. I didn't even know you were pitching an
no, no.
example.
The example I gave for the exercise was
I mean,
she
I didn't even know you were doing.
is a CEO who's a strong
Right.
female. And then you said, yeah, but what about her? What about her story becoming the CEO? And I was like, that's a different story. We can talk about that. But I'm talking about she is being the CEO, and a strong female character isn't interesting just because she's a strong female character who's a CEO. So it doesn't matter how she got there, because that's not the story that's being pitched as the example for the exercise.
But I didn't know that. I didn't know. I
Well,
didn't know
that's what I
you were
was saying.
pitching an example, and we were in the middle of
No,
it.
that's what I was saying. I was doing it as an exercise for us. But what my point was, if she is just currently, without looking at the past, we are in the present narrative that she is indeed, without a doubt. My pitch is she's a strong female character who's a CEO. There's nothing interesting about that, because there's no choices based on it. There's no, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, she's infallible. She did everything. She's at the top of her game. And if somebody is saying, I want that character so I can show a character being in their prime, being in their greatness, there's nothing interesting about that, because there's no conflict. Engagement is formed through tension and conflict plus resolve. So,
like we just had right here. We had
no,
tension, we had conflict,
we had tension
and
conflict,
now
but it
we're
wasn't
going to have
negative.
resolve.
Yeah.
Because I'm not talking about it anymore. And that's the resolve we're going to have.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, that's true. Every great story needs the tension, conflict, and resolve.
Yep.
Do you ever just throw tension and conflict in your scenes, or like do you purposefully go in with conflict and tension in mind, or do you write like a scene and then say, how do I create conflict and tension in this?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. It reminds me of my first book. I had the character go out and to an Oktoberfest on a date.
Yeah.
She had a really fabulous time, and it was just too nice. So when she went in the house alone, something had to be there, whether it was going to be an intruder or she knew somebody was in the house, her door was unlocked or whatever. But I made it the ex-husband was there, or the man that she was in the middle of, she was going to get divorced from, and they had separated, and he knew she went on a date, and he had been drinking, and she was frightened, of his presence. So that I just didn't want the character going in the house, and the end of the chapter was just nice, like everything was good, and she had a wonderful date, and she was going to go to bed. I felt like there needed to be some kind of something, that stirred up the night, that shook it up for her, So that's what I did. So,
do you ever have like micro tensions or conflicts?
Oh yeah, sure. Like with friendships, and maybe where people have snarky comments, and they go at it, like not really go at it. Maybe the one character lets it go, or maybe she says something later on, or yeah, sure.
Do you ever do positive conflicts and tensions? Like, how do you approach those? How do you approach a positive conflict or tension?
Well, a positive conflict or tension, I don't set out. It's not like something I set out to do. I feel like the characters are just going to play it out themselves, where the scene just kind of like writes itself.
Yeah.
I don't say I'm going to make this a positive conflict. Not that I can recall anyway. I mean,
if you see it,
but nothing comes to mind like the other scene that I said, where the woman comes home and it was just too nice, and I needed something to stir it up, shake it up a little bit because it was just too nice.
Have you ever, while you were writing, the characters played themselves into a positive conflict and you change it to more of a negative conflict / tension?
I mean,
Just because it felt more positive?
I don't want to say positive. I want to say maybe I was writing a scene and I felt like the character was maybe letting things go too much,
Oh,
and
well,
she needed
yeah, I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about like where it's an actual conflict and tension, but it's a positive
and it's
variation of that conflict and tension. You know, for example, if somebody gets a promotion, that's a conflict and tension because it's conflicting against their normal life, their status quo. So now they have to make choices and changes that will influence more pressure. Oh, I got a promotion, but now I'm dealing with the pressure of having to be a boss.
right,
And I was only here for a year, and everyone is a little upset because I got the promotion, but it's because I have a past,
right,
I have a history. But it is a positive conflict tension because they are dealing with the new circumstances
right.
of
When
the
I
change.
and it's funny because when I think of conflict, right away, conflict tension, I think of disagreements. I look at it as in a negative way. I don't look at it. I don't
Yeah.
find those words positive. So if you say to me, "Do you ever have a positive conflict tension?"
Yeah,
To
yeah, yeah.
me, to me, that's maybe two people, having a conflict, and then it turns into a positive situation because they realize, hey, this is actually for the better
Yeah.
for us. That's how I look at it. So I look at it like differently than you're describing it. When I hear conflict and tension, I right away go to the negative. I
You're
don't
like
look at
somebody has to
hey,
get shot in the head.
yeah, I look at it. I look at it like trouble in a relationship, or and that's
Yeah.
probably maybe because of the stuff that I write too. I don't know,
Well,
because it's all about relationships and betrayal, and then
now,
hope,
now
second chances.
with that, does that mean you approach a consequence as negative always? Like there's no such thing as a positive consequence in the result of resolution?
No, there is positive. There's
Yeah,
definitely Yep, there's definitely positive.
because I know
Maybe
consequence can sound like a negative because it's a
consequence
consequence,
does consequence does sound like a negative, but
but it can be either
spun.
way. It's the
It could be
result.
spun, and yeah, it could definitely be spun into a positive. So
Well,
I've done that.
consequence in general is just result. It's not necessarily a negative. Like it would have to be a negative consequence to be bad. It could be a
Right,
positive consequence. It could actually be a neutral consequence too. Like nothing can come from it. It could just be the results are nothing.
nothing,
Nothing.
which is boring, isn't
Well,
it? Isn't that going back to when you said
it
that's
depends how you
boring?
write it. It depends what if
Here
the
we go
writer has a
again.
beard or not. You know, we don't know. We don't know.
We don't know.
Well,
We don't know until we know.
a neutral consequence isn't necessarily bad because when you're dealing with positions, challenges, and adjustment, a character is going to either completely change, somewhat change, or not change at all. If they don't change at all, they double down, right? So that's a right character movement, right, or a character arc. So in the neutral consequence, that would be the double down. That would be
So give me an example in one of your books. Give me three examples in your books with the doubling down, the positive conflict tension, and the what was the other one?
Well, all right. So devious. This is because of the prologue in the first chapter. It's clearly out there. Uh, Devious is a child that grew up in a wealthy city. He was a prince. His family was murdered in front of him. All right. So the positive consequence is that he was adopted by a loving people and that they raised him. Right. But the positive conflict tension is that he's also being trained as the arbor, which is ultimately somebody who will eventually become the leader of the people. Right. And this has caused tension amongst other people, but not necessarily. It's not necessarily a negative thing. Like he's not forced into a bad situation. He's placed into a very healthy situation. But he also deals with the conflict of I want to avenge my family, but I also want to honor the people that saved me, that gave me love. And that is an inward conflict, right? That's going on. So that would be an example of a positive conflict. A consequence where somebody doubles down is Emlyn. Emlyn consistently throughout the first couple of chapters is doubling down on his position. He's not changing. He's just doubling down. He's being who he is. He's aggravated at his situation because Devious is here, right? That's just who he is. So he's not changing for the better or somewhat changing. He's just constantly being the same. But that doubling down means he gets more aggressive, or he gets more defensive, or he has more things to say. You know, he's becoming more and more of who he is. Negative consequences are fairly easy, though. You know, the city gets ransacked. that's a
so. And when you go into your stories and you're creating your characters, do you already know? Like you asked me, do you already know what the positive conflict is going to be, the tension, or you know, do you plot your stories out? Do you write out the index cards and have the, you know, character description for every character that you have?
So I have this book right here, 27 plot point outline. Right. This book is a book that is going to be out in January. I am an outlining guru.
Yeah. So you like to outline. I'm not an outliner.
But I also discover.
I fly by the seat of my pants.
So do I.
And then the characters. But I'm not saying anything wrong about people that plot. I think it's great.
No. I think also write from the seat of my pants.
I've seen, you know, I believe you, especially because of the stuff that you write. But I've seen people have boards. They have vision boards. They have pictures. They know exactly what their character looks like. Sometimes it resembles, you know, a celebrity.
Well, I don't do that. That's too much.
Well, sometimes it is a celebrity. No, I don't do that either. And another good question is, when you picture your characters, are their faces a blur? Like, or do you know exactly, like, do they have like a visual, you know, do they have their features? Are they clear to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're not for everybody.
Well, no, but I also started as an illustrator. That was my first career. I worked in comic books. I almost worked for Disney, you know, as an illustrator, so I have a very good visual of them, but I also do not expect the visual that I see in my head to be the thing I want others to see.
Right.
I don't describe my characters beyond the things of note, meaning like if a character has a scar, that's of note, but you know, the way they look is not interesting.
So let's take Emlyn. In your mind, I don't know if you name the character first or you visualize the character first or it happened at the same time, but
I don't do any of that.
Oh, so what do you do? What's your process?
Yeah, Emlyn didn't have a name until my first draft. So he was just character 2. All right. Okay. And the reason is because when I plot, I do not go into great detail. I do broad general ideas. And the first thing I have to know is what is the main central conflict of the narrative, because that's the driving force of the story, right? Which is Devious's main, right? Your protagonist's main character arc is the central conflict, right? If you're going to start from the emotional truth. So the thing I start with is those core inside things. I wasn't like he's a prince and he loses his family,
right?
And he gets to die. None of that.
Interesting. See, everybody writes and comes up with their ideas differently. Like, how did you come up with the story for Emlyn? How did that?
Well, I wanted to understand the emotional relationship between what he was struggling with and what he was dealing with Devious and the other characters.
But like, where did you get the idea for that story? Was it from something you've seen in the past, you've read, or like dialogue, or like where did the main idea for that story come from?
I wanted to explore an emotional thing, which was where he is. I was like in my mind, I had Devious, and I was like, not that I said to myself, I need a foil, because I don't think like that. But Emlyn is ultimately a foil. He's Devious's foil. You know, they're counter. They bring it out of each other, right? But in my mind, I was like, what is an emotional, interesting thing to explore? And then I just thought about ideas. I brainstormed and I just came up with the concept of Emlyn's situation, which I don't want to get because it's a spoiler.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it.
When you come up with these ideas, do you like jot them down somewhere? Do you
I have.
Are they in your head?
Well, they are in my head, but
So, I
I
mean, do
have
they just stay in your head until you actually flesh out the story, or do you like make notes on a board or like
no,
in a
I
book
got Google
in your
Doc.
phone?
I Google Doc it so I can actually activate my phone. I use Google Docs, and then I have I have like a narrative note sheet, and then I have a chapter note sheet, which are two different things. And the narrative note sheet basically is all my brainstorming ideas, and then as soon as I come up with them, I don't think linearly yet. I just think of emotional things I want to explore. These kind of internal conflicts, or what would be interesting between these two characters or four characters dealing with this emotional conflict. And then those are just random ideas. Then I start putting it together with what I call a short form outline, which is just like a line or maybe 3 lines per beat. So there are 27 beats in a narrative. Every narrative, doesn't matter if you outline or not. If it's a full story, it has 27 beats, right? So I write just this, but it's only Devious in this situation. That's the only one I cared about in the beginning because he's the main narrative. So I go, this is Devious's start. This is where he is. This is his inciting incident. This is the reaction to it. This is him thinking about the long-term effects of the inciting incident. Right. So what does that scene look like? I don't worry about that in the short form. I just worry about the emotional beat of what he's dealing with internally and maybe externally, but not how it plays out, because that's the discovery part. That's the part I like to kind of like play with. But from there, I just extend on that. I go, all right, now let me put the other characters in. What are their stories? What's Emlyn's arc? What is Zanaya's arc? What is Otis's arc? What is, Aaliyah's arc? Right. So these are all, so I have to make 27 plot points for each character. And then I sort of kind of mix and match them into beats. And then I turn those beats into chapters. And then I outline the chapters. But I don't outline chapters like you would think. I outline them. It's not like I'm like, I need to explain what world building is here. No, I start off with what needs to happen. Well, Devious needs to feel this and experience this. So that's the scene. So then I work out how that scene plays out. There's some dialogue, there's some movement, but it's not prose. It's just, it's short form. It's outlining. It's, Devious does this, Emlyn does that, Zanaya does this. And then from there, you write the first draft, and that's where the pros come in. That's where I get to see who these characters are. That's where, I go a little deeper into the emotions. It's where, and then second draft is the immersion, though. That's where I'm feeling things. The suns, the grass, the way people make you second guess yourself. So it's a process. That's where I come up with my stories, though. It's just I start with that emotional seed of what is it? Because again, I come from an industry where they shut you down if you say something quote unquote stupid. If you're sitting around a table and you're like, oh, it'd be really great if she has guns next, because it's not interesting, right?
Here we go back again to this, Thomas.
But what I'm saying is,
a good writer can make it interesting.
But that's what I was taught to do, was to make it interesting.
This tension
no, you're right.
we're having is making me very hungry.
What you're saying is right. What you're saying is right, because I had to switch the brain to make it interesting. I had to learn to start with what is interesting, and then she could have guns. The guns are the fun part, but who is she? And what is she struggling with? What is she not struggling with? Because those are too important as well. You need both those. But I used to always start off with, there's a dragon, whatever. And now it's like, how does that dragon influence this specific thing? How does it take this emotional journey and something they have to work through? But that's what changed the way I approach writing. So I don't come up with, like you were saying, like, where do you get the idea? I literally start with, there's blank, and it's an emotional seed. And I know that I have to build from that seed. And that's where the discovery comes from. Because as I'm building the emotional pushback on those positions, this thing is now happening, and this thing is now happening. But there's a why behind it. Instead of going, I want this character and this character to have a fight. That's not interesting, right? So I have to think, where is that fight coming from? And if the emotional journey leads to the fight, that's interesting because it's the tension, it's the buildup, it's the bottle.
I agree with almost everything you say. What a fun conversation we had today. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, no, this was a blast. I
think we should always have these conflict tensions.
It makes for engaging content,
and then it sure does. And then I go play pickleball, and I take it out on the ball.
You got to take it out on the balls because I'm
going to see if it improves my game today. This conversation we had.
Is pickleball with a net or the wall? I forget.
It's a net, yeah. The wall is handball.
Oh,
but yeah, pickleball's a net. It kind of reminds you of tennis in a way. So
same rules,
but it's fun. No, it just you could play with four people. Usually you play with four people, and there's like an area. I don't play tennis, so I can't say it's the same rules or not, but it's all about having a good time.
Is it like table tennis?
But there's a net. You know what? It's like tape. It can remind you of like ping pong, table tennis, but only people are on a court. So like you bring that, you take away the table and you put it on a court, and it's kind of like exactly the same thing, but there's places you can't step. You have your boundaries.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But it's a really fun game. If you haven't played it, you should try it. Some people are like, I'll never play pickleball, but it's really fun. It's a social activity. Yeah. It keeps your mind going because there is strategy involved, and it's it's good exercise. It's good to keep the body moving, especially as writers, we sit a lot.
Yeah. Now, do you have to watch how you hit it because it's made of a pickle and it could blow up?
Well, it's a wiffle ball. Pickles don't bounce. Unless they're made of rubber. But yeah, that is a good question because it doesn't matter how you hit the ball, because if you hit the ball up in the air, somebody can really return it really hard, and you can't get that ball. And you want to try to keep it like low, slow, and controlled. So, and that's what I have. I've been playing for a while now, but sometimes it's not always easy when you're playing with people that have played tennis in the past, and they like that long game where the ball, they hit the ball long, deep. You don't really want that. You want to like try to get up to the net as close as as fast as you can. You give it some time, but as fast as you can, and then try to do what they call dinking.
Dinking, of course, yeah.
That can be nerve-wracking because it's slow.
You don't want to dink,
and you don't want to hit the net.
Yeah.
So it's it's interesting. It's fun. If you ever get a chance to play it, you should.
Now you're saying you can't hit the net, but can you have like a conversation with the net? To be like, look, I'm upset at you. I know I'm not allowed to hit you.
You sure can. That would make a good story too. Like,
that's right. That in itself is interesting.
That in itself is interesting.
Some crazy person standing on the court talking to
by themselves, thinking they're having an imaginary game of pickleball and talking to the net.
Yeah, I would read that for 330 pages. That's just, it's crazy.
I'll keep that in mind. Maybe I'll write that. Everybody says we need a pickleball book, so maybe
that's right. Pickleball. Stefanie Nici, how do people find you?
Oh, I'm all over social media. Stefanie Nici Writer on Facebook, Stefanie Nici on Facebook, Stefanie Nici Writer on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and here on your show today. And in the future.
I will have links to her stuff in the comments below, but if you're listening on audio and you like our fun Long Island Italian rhetoric, her name is not spelled with PH, it's Stefanie, and then her last name is Nici. Feel free to check her out on the social of the media. All right, as always, I had a lot of fun today. Did you
too. I had a lot of fun. It's good to disagree on things, even though we kind of agreed, but
it's just the terminology was a little skewed. Skewed.
But here we are at the resolve.
That's right.
It was a great day. We're smiling. We're laughing.
That's right. That's all that matters. People think we're actually yelling, but we're not. This is just what Italians sound like from Long Island. We are loud.
And it's healthy. And it's healthy, though. Debating is healthy. Yes. That's good.
Absolutely. Without debating, you can't learn anything,
That's right.
All right. Well, with that, everybody, thanks again, Stefanie. And I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. Keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.